Hello, friends. Fantastic episode today with Nathan Baws. Interesting guy. He's done 15 different startups across a ton of different industries: health, wellness, weight loss, food service, coffee barista, marketing. He was on Shark Tank Australia, has a Guinness World Record. Cool guy, and it's been a great time getting to know him. If you're out there and you're listening and you haven't subscribed to our various platforms, please do that for us. It does mean a lot. Lets us know as creators that we're doing the right things and that people are interested in our content. YouTube, hit it. All the platforms where you consume your podcast, Spotify's, Apple's, Audible. Please give us a subscription, like 5 stars. That does mean the world to us. It lets us know we're on the right track. Thank you, everybody. Enjoy this one. Nathan, good evening.
Alex, good morning.
It's fantastic. It's 9 a.m. here, 9 p.m. there. So we're just 12 hours apart. You told me the future's fantastic, so I'm excited for it.
Future's amazing, mate. Just wait till it comes your way.
Nathan, you have a lot of different things that you've done. I saw 15 different companies that you've been a part of, started, or helped to start. Why don't you give me your own personal branding pitch here? What are you up to right now, and who is Nathan?
Yeah, cool. Look, Alex, I love business of any flavour, shape, or form. I've done a bunch of different businesses over the years in lots of different categories. I just find it interesting and exciting to particularly love the startup phase. Really get excited about new businesses and new opportunities and finding new solutions. So currently, what I mean, in food, restaurants, home delivery of heat and eat meals. So mainly the food category, and we've sliced and diced that into a bunch of different verticals. I always think it's great if you can find a bunch of different revenue generating um, structures within the one business. So we've got about 6 or 7 different ones within that food category. Um, we are launching a couple of startups. So we're in the health space, in wellness. We've created a weight loss program for hotels, which we have a couple in startup phase in Indonesia at the moment. And we're in the education space within children financial literacy, because we feel there's a big gap there in the market. And everyone we speak to, it's always, oh, why don't they teach financial literacy at a school level? So we're doing a fair bit in that space at the moment as well. So they're the main ones currently.
That's amazing,
Yeah.
Nathan. Those are a lot of causes that are also close to my heart. Helping young people become entrepreneurs, that's a big thing that I'm excited about. That's a big portion of what I am attempting to do with this podcast is give away good free information for people. And then health's a big one for me also. I've fortunately I just found this out. My mother's maiden name is Stang, Stang, and in German what that meant was built like a beanpole. So we
Right.
have just a stock of tall, skinny people. So
Okay.
fortunately, I've never had weight loss needing to be a thing that was a problem for me. But health, wellness, fitness, that's something that I'm really excited about as like a personal project. But yeah, so 15 different businesses, Nathan. Take me back to the beginning. Where does all this start? Do you start as a corporate accountant and go, God, I hate this? Did you always know you wanted to be a business owner?
Mate, I started as a 6-year-old who was eating way too many potatoes at that
Mm.
age, and realized pretty soon why we were eating so many potatoes. Brought up by a single mum, and certainly didn't have much access to any financial options. And I just realized at a very young age that didn't really want to be eating potatoes as frequently as I wanted, as I was being as was being consumed. So started looking for different ways of generating funds. And at 6 years of age, didn't really have too much of an idea how to put it all together. So started my first business at 6, pretty unsuccessfully, but doing the only thing that we knew how to do, bringing the only skill to market that we had, which was making paper aeroplanes. So,
Mm.
but learnt a bunch of lessons along the way, and then utilized that in lots of different industries. I studied naturopathy, so became really passionate about health, and brought up by a bit of a hippie mum who was, loved the alfalfa sprouts at a very young age. So, influenced that into that direction and studied naturopathy, then opened up. I actually was lucky enough to have a pharmacist mentor who I worked for 8 years, who is
Mm.
just a phenomenal businessman, and I just sort of absorbed as much as I could off him over the 8 year period. Then set up my own health shop, and that went phenomenally well. And then set up another couple of health shops, and then created a supplement brand that I sold across Australia. So very very deep into the health world. Um, and then left that for a while and went into property. We were doing property in the UK, and doing creative finance, and buying property without any of our own money, which was interesting. That was around the time of 2010, the financial crisis, where there wasn't too many funds available, so we had to
Those
look for
damn
other options.
Americans, they ruined everything, didn't they?
But look, on the positive side, you guys taught us to get creative, so that's what we
Mm.
did. Um, yeah, went into that for 3 years and built a bit of a portfolio in the UK, and then came back to Australia. We had our first little daughter came along, and realised that UK was a bit cold and a bit smelly, and too many grey skies, and we
What
wanted
part
to
of the
be,
UK?
well, London.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah,
that's the big one, right? That's kind of the
yeah.
financial capital of that part of the world.
Yeah, plenty. I mean, it's a great city. We were just there a couple of weeks ago, and took the kids back, and awesome for a holiday, but not the place you really want to bring up kids in.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, came back to Australia, then got into the foodie. Went, opened up 3 restaurants and retail stores, and did Shark Tank and pitched my restaurants on Shark Tank, which was fun. And then got into some of these other fields that we're in now. So just had a bit of fun along the way. I find it really, really fun, all this stuff and building.
Your story is one that I've heard from a lot of entrepreneurs. I feel it in myself. They really love the beginning phase of a
Mm,
business, but then
mm,
once it gets going, and this is a dangerous thing for an entrepreneur. You have to
mm,
know that you have this thing inside of you that goes, I want to change something. I want to start something new. I had to learn that the hard way. I started two
mm,
companies at a very similar time, and it was just super difficult for me to manage both of them. And not to say that they both failed, still involved in mixed solutions here, but my other company, I didn't have the bandwidth to do two
mm,
things at once.
mm,
So maybe talk to me about that idea of like I like starting things,
mm.
but as you get going, you didn't say you don't like managing, but I kind of read between the lines that like the management part is not necessarily always as fun.
100%. I think that, as you rightly clarified, it's something that entrepreneurs really love, is that startup phase, that adrenaline phase, where you're putting it all together and all the ideas are flowing and you're bouncing off, potential partners or whatever, creating this amazing opportunity. And I think just paving that way where there's nothing paved before, that, putting all the pieces together on the chessboard is so much fun. Just because you're basically creating your own destiny. So you can you can shape it, you can steer the ship whichever direction you want to go. But you're right, it's the management side is half as sexy. It's really
But that's
um,
where the money's made, right?
100%, 100%. And I've done in the past within the health industry. I was in that for 7 years. I sold it. I had a great exit.
Mm.
But thinking about it, you always think, well, should I have kept going within that industry? Now you get the 7 year itch, and I tend to try and push through that and
What's
say,
the
all right,
7 year
well,
itch? At year 7, you think about doing something different?
It seems to be. It seems to be that
Mm.
that you've conquered certain levels of whatever your goals are, and then you get a little bit bored, so you need something to continue the. I'm realizing now the long term journey is where it's at. There is always shiny itis. There's always that next shot. And we've got to be careful about that with entrepreneurs, especially like you said, if you don't have the bandwidth. I'm really focused on putting the team so that we can create more. The business continues even when you're not focusing on it on a daily basis. So it's a challenge,
Yeah, I recently saw
no
something from
question.
Tim Ferriss where he was talking about how being busy is actually a form of laziness because what you're doing is like you're making yourself busy with all of these different things that aren't actually working on the root problems in your business. And
Hmm.
I think that's one of the things that I see a lot of entrepreneurs do. And I've talked about it so many times on this podcast that the fast way is the slow way. Like you have to do the same thing over and over and over again for a really long period of time. Like I've never been in the restaurant business, but I've heard having one restaurant is basically a waste of money. You need to get to 7, 8, 10, 12, 15 kind of thing to actually
Mm.
start to make money. But to do that takes a ton of time. So you have to slowly build this thing week after week, month after month, year after year if you
Mm.
want to get to where you want to go. And so many of my friends that are like junior entrepreneurs, which I'm like excited for them. I'm like, that's awesome. You're going after it. But they'll do something for like 12 or 16 months and start to get traction and be like, yeah, I'm just going to do something different. And I'm like, what are you doing? Like, it's working. Like, you made, $50,000 in profit yet last year. Like, that's good. Like, that's not easy to
Mm.
do in a business. Like, keep it going. And they're like, I just don't know. I just don't know if it's scalable. And I'm like, you're not even at a point yet to like know what that thing is.
Determine
You've
that.
done it for like a
Yeah.
year and change. And I think it is a little bit of just that itch that like
Mm.
I want to be busy. So what do? I do something different. And it's like I'm innovating. I'm being a creator. And it's like, no, you're just like leaving what's working for something that
True.
is like this ethereal thing out there. So I'm certainly not saying that's what you've done, but it's a real balancing act for an entrepreneur
Hmm.
to not get so excited at year two that you're like, okay, we were doing prepackaged meals, but now we're opening a restaurant. And your business partner's like, what are you doing? No, like, stick to the plan here.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's true. And every day it's always a question of, okay, what are the most important tasks that are actually going to not just spin my wheels, but take me forwards? What are the priorities that are actually going to move the dial? And that's a constant ongoing conversation, internal conversation that I do always have. So you're right. You don't want to just be busy. You don't want to, as Tim Ferriss says, it's easy to look busy or feel busy, but being actually productive and moving the needle forwards and actually making serious steps forwards is easy to confuse with busyness.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah, yeah.
it's a
I mean,
trap.
sometimes
Yeah.
if someone in the business here is like looking to take like a mental rest, they'll go out into the warehouse and they'll like pack orders for like an hour or something. And it's like, "Oh, I'm busy, I'm working, I'm moving," but it's like it's not really you're taking a rest. Like you're taking a mental rest actually.
Mental rest.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because you're just like I can turn my brain off and kind of just, pick these orders real fast.
And look, that can be good at times to create a bit of a meditational
Yeah.
state and just turn the brain off. Sometimes when you're that intense and the ideas are flying around and the day is just going everywhere, if you can, I will actually do that as a form of meditation. Is go out and wash something, wash my car or do something productive but in a physical brain off and just allow it space to actually, you know, recalibrate. Because I think meditation is a great exercise, but I don't have the patience to sit still. So I find an active type of meditation where I can be physically active but turn the brain off for a while can be quite useful. But I get what you're saying. If you're as an escape on a regular basis and not move forwards, you got to be mindful of that too.
Yeah, I mean, we're
Yeah.
we're not assuming that they're getting like a lot of deep work done, but it's kind of that
Mm,
analogy like, "Oh, I'm working." And but it's like, "Okay,
mm.
well, you're not really working on the important problems at the company."
Yep.
Um
Yep. Totally.
so like how do you think about that then? Balancing starting something new with sticking to the task and keeping at the core business model, cuz 15 different businesses, I know you said over 40 years. Like how do you decide when it is time to pivot and when it's like, hey, no pivots, stick to the script here?
I've been in the situations where I've been losing a lot of money in some businesses, and then it's at that point and my background is like I've done some quite successful businesses with some 6 7 figure exits, etc. But um, so you think when you have a few of those successes that you can pretty much sort any problem out, and this is
Dangerous
the
place to be, right?
Ooh,
Dangerous.
ooh, totally. This is the big fat ego in the background saying, "Yeah, you got this. You got this. You've done that. You can do this." Well, it doesn't always work like that. And at one stage, I was in restaurants. I had 3 restaurants, and they were hemorrhaging serious cash. 10 to 20 grand a month, just straight out of the bank account. Keeping these things afloat, which was a fantastic learning experience. But you get to the stage where you go, all right, why am I in this? Why am I doing this? Can I seriously turn it around? If I can, what's the time frame going to be like? Is it, a month, or more realistically, is it a couple of years? How much time am I going to burn cash for? And what is the real reason that I'm actually staying in this business? Um,
Mm.
is it because I don't want to look like a failure? That's a bitter pill to swallow when you're an entrepreneur. So I think it's really hard, and that was one of the hardest freaking decisions of my life, was to actually go, no, these businesses aren't working, and I don't have the skill set to turn them around.
Mm.
So I'm going to shut them down. So that took a lot of um, a lot of yeah, you know what to but so that was a decision that was made, and hard one, but it was a fantastic one. From that, with anything, any sort of tough decisions in life, or any tough that you go through, I always try to find where's the benefit, and what's the lesson. They're the two things that I always try and narrow it down. What did I learn out of that I can use for my future businesses, and how can that benefit me moving forwards? And you can turn around some pretty tragic stuff that goes on in your life if you just have a different angle to look at the same issue with.
Mm.
So from that, it was great. You can throw in the towel and surrender, or you can say, all right, I can actually learn from that, and all those skills that I've learned over those X amount of years of doing it wrong, I can then flip it and start doing things a little bit differently. So they're the things that motivated me to move forwards, changed businesses, and as I say, some of those businesses, looking back, I probably should have stayed in them more long term. So now I take the view when I'm starting a new business is, have I got partners involved in the key areas that can continue to manage the business once it's up and running?
Mm.
And that's a really, really important thing. Otherwise, because it's just an area that I don't get excited about. So you need that appropriate skill set. If you don't have it, um, I'm great at starting businesses and creating solutions, but managing them, that's where I need team to come and get involved.
I think you've probably gotten to a point in your entrepreneurial journey where I sort of am right now. You start to get realistic with yourself about the things that you're good at and the things that you
Mm,
like to do, and then the things that you're not so good at and the things you don't like to do. And when you're first starting in a business, you don't get to have those conversations because you have to do everything, right? Like it doesn't matter whether or not you're good at packing orders or good at managing or good at hiring or good at terminating or good at selling. You have to do all those things. Even if you don't like them, you're just
Mm,
like, this is
mm,
yeoman's work. This is what I have to do. But as you get farther along in the business, I think it's important to actually talk to yourself and say, hey, I hate doing the hiring process. I hate training.
correct.
That's not what I'm good at. That's not what I want to do. And if you don't want to do it, it's hard to be good at it, right? Because you're just going to be kind of slogging along. So you can kind of do a little bit of self reflection and go, hey, like you said, I like creating. Like, I'm going to be on the forefront of creativity at our business. But this other stuff, I'm going to let someone else step in and do. I'm going to hire for that and not try to insert myself unnecessarily in all these little minutia decisions. And that's going to lead to you being happier. Like you talked about, you hit that
Mm,
7 year kind of point where you go, oh, I hate this. Well, probably half of that is because you're doing all the things in your business that you hate to do. And you're like, oh, I have to do it. Nobody else can do the bookkeeping. It's like, dude, wake up. This is not hard.
mm,
This is like a big kick that I'm on right now is I read this book called Buy Back Your Time and by Dan
yes.
Martell. And oh my
Yeah.
gosh,
Love it.
Nathan,
Yeah.
I'm like obsessed with it right now. So dude, I'm
Yeah.
doing the
Yeah. He's
camcorder
awesome.
method on everything. And once you record a video showing someone how to do something,
Yep.
like one time you go, geez, that video was 12 minutes long. Like I've been doing this thing for 4 years because I don't think anyone else knows how to do it. And my video was 12 minutes. Like that was not that much explaining to do. Like I can probably actually teach someone how to do that in 30 minutes and then never have to show them again how to do it. So you just you have this idea that I'm the only person who knows how to do these things, and that's
Mm.
just totally untrue. And more often than not, you're not going to be the best person at it anyways.
Absolutely. You're much better off allowing someone who loves the crap that you hate doing to step into that position. And it just makes sense. If they're passionate about doing something that you hate, well, they're going to do it 10 times better than you.
Right.
So letting go of that control is just so important to allow people to flourish and grow in the stuff that they do. And your business is going to be 10 times better. You stick to that little niche that you love because you're awesome at it, and let them do what they love, and it's just a win-win combination.
Yeah, Dan says that it's sort of like rude actually for you to do a job that you hate and someone else would love, right? Because you're actually
Right.
depriving them of doing the thing that they love. Like for me, I hate doing like small little repetitive tasks that are sort of like
Mm-hmm.
mindless. But there's a gal in our
Mm-hmm.
office that she's like, "Oh, I just love that. It's like meditative. I can just like go in and just like kind of just do all the work. Like that's what I really like doing that." Now, I don't know if she wants to do that 8 hours a day, but I don't want to do it 1 hour a day. So like just the fact that she likes it, and also like it's funny because we have 3 departments in our warehouse, and I am clearly of the opinion there's a good, better, best job, and sometimes we'll start people in the job that I think is like best, and they're like, I hate this job. I want to go work in the job that I think is the worst, and I'm like, all right,
Why
if
would you?
that's the job, yeah, if that's yeah,
Yeah.
why would you want that? But
Yeah.
that's just like it's
Yeah.
differences in people, man. Some people like
Yeah.
doing that. Some people want to do your book. Some people want to like
Mm.
do email management on your behalf. Some people want to do like little small minutia tasks. Like hire someone, bring somebody in to do that. You don't have to
Mm.
do it.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I find all that admin and bookkeeping totally soul destroying for a creative person.
Yeah.
But you're right. There's bookkeepers out there that love that stuff. My dad loves spreadsheets. He's an accountant. And I sort of look at him sideways most of the time, but he loves it. That's what excites him. So who am I to deprive him of doing that sort of thing? So yeah, totally
Talk
agree.
to me about what you learned about the restaurant business. That's a business that I've always had like a cursory interest in, but I know that bars and restaurants fail at like the highest rate of basically any
Mm.
business. So, and you said that the restaurants, they sort of worked, but they sort of didn't. You learned.
Yeah, look, it was. I mean, they say, how do you make $1 million out of a restaurant? Start with 10, and that's a good way to get to one. But yeah, I went from doing it with being in the health industry, and as I say, doing pretty well out of that, and then going across thinking, yeah, this is simple, this is business. I can make this work. and realizing that, actually, no, it doesn't quite work that way. There's a lot of nuances
Not
in
all industries are created equal. That is something that I had to
not at
learn
all.
the hard way. You think that like, oh,
Hmm.
I had success in the supplement industry, like I'll have success in the
Hmm.
restaurant industry. And sometimes you just fail to recognize like some industries, no disrespect, some industries stink. Some industries there's like no money to be made and everybody's just like competing each
Mm.
other to death.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. I mean, and at restaurants for sure is one of those. I mean, I've got my brother and sister-in-law are phenomenal at restaurants and cafes, and they do incredibly well out of it. But there's a lot of hard work in it for a $4 or $5 coffee. There's a lot of reviews, and everyone's an expert, and it's definitely a lot of moving parts in the business. The first one we opened, we did really well out of it, and then so we thought, okay, that we just replicate that,
Mm,
um, and it didn't quite equate that way. So, but had some phenomenal, as I say, learning curves out of that then got applied to future businesses. It's a very capital intensive sort of business to be in,
mm.
based on the returns. So
Oh yeah.
some people, far and few, do really well out of it, but it's a tough gig. Yeah.
Yeah, if you were
So
going to go back and coach yourself before you got into the restaurant industry, what are the things that you would have said? Because I know what I would have said to myself before I got into the construction industry. I don't know if I could have talked myself off the ledge, but I would have said, look, this is an industry that has an extremely low barrier to entry. Like, I love it. That's
mm,
capitalistic, you know, the free market at work. But if there's an extremely low barrier to entry and there's low differentiation between product or service, then essentially you're going to be competing with an enormous group of people for a small group of customers where it's virtually impossible to tell the difference between Alex's service and Nathan's service. And people don't fundamentally actually care about what we were doing. We were doing exterior construction, mostly roofing. Like Nathan, I don't. Do you know what color your roof is? Because a lot of people just like when I say that, they're like,
no, we
brown.
never played.
There
Yeah,
you go. Right,
yeah,
exactly. You know what color your house is. You know what color your siding is. Like the
right,
tiles in your bathroom. But
yeah,
people just didn't really care about their roof. I know the whole sales pitch is like, oh, this is like the first layer of defense of the home, but people just didn't care. So it was
yeah.
very difficult for us to differentiate ourselves, and that led to just like a bloodbath fighting for customers who just weren't that good at
Mm.
customers to begin with.
Yeah, yeah, that's so true. I mean, looking back at it, the biggest thing that I would have done differently is tested it before investing, $250,000 into every site. Would have been just a
Mm.
really, really simple test. For example, we um, I've got the retail stores that sell packaged meals, right? And these go to lots of different shopping centres. We cover about 30 different centres around Perth, and we go to centres and we'll suss it out straight away if the demographics are right for
Was
that
it like a
particular product.
food truck cart? Like how does that
No,
work?
these are actual little temporary retail stores. So
Okay.
so we have a bunch of freezers and some staff, and they'll sell direct to the public.
Mm.
So face to face in shopping centres. So it's really simple to very quickly ascertain if people are interested in that product. That's what I should have done in each of the locations that I built restaurants in, and just see if there's the interest in it. It's a quick, easy. If you start thinking outside of the box, how can we test our USP, and find out if there's interest for that unique selling proposition that we're thinking is going to work. So a little bit more testing and measuring would have just saved me a heck of a lot of
Mm.
time and money, because we opened one of the restaurants in one of the big centres in Western Australia, and I thought, look, if we've done really well in this first little shopping centre, it'll compete with anyone, it'll compete with everyone. We're going to be, the place of choice. We opened the restaurant, and we're offering Italian food. The demographics were from sort of Asia mostly, and the most common question was they were reading the menu and they were saying, "What is spaghetti?" And
Mm,
we were sort of like, What do you mean? That's spaghetti. What do you mean? What is spaghetti?" And it's like, "Yeah, what is spaghetti?" And it's like, oh my God, the majority of these people have no idea what we're actually doing. And
mm,
we've invested all this time and money into this restaurant and no one knows. And having to go through that educational side of things when you're trying to sell a product is just, yeah, not a game you want to get into unless you've got deep pockets.
yeah. I just had an
Yeah.
individual on the podcast, and one of the big things that he does is he helps brands test consumer products before they launch to market. So what he does is he'll set up like landing pages, run the ads, actually get people to like make the purchase, and then when they make the purchase, it just says like, okay, this isn't in stock yet. Like we'll notify you when it's in stock.
Beautiful. Great
So
idea.
essentially what he can do is find out, okay, Nathan, you want to launch at, whatever this packaged meal company. Let's find out how much is it going to cost to actually acquire this customer. We'll set up the ad, we'll set up like a kind of small website. It'll cost you $2,000. So then instead of you going to your manufacturer and getting, I think he was doing a canned water company, and he's like, yeah, I have to buy 100,000 units. He's like, but I've already done the testing online and had good
Mhm.
acquisition cost and everything. So he's like, I'm not really that worried. Obviously, there's still some sense of nervousness there, but he knows approximately how much it's going to cost to go acquire a customer on Facebook or whatever it is now because he's
Mm.
actually acquired the customers before launching. And I was
Brilliant.
like, wow, that's a good idea.
Smart idea. Yeah, yeah. Those little tests that you can do can save you a heck of a lot of time and money for sure.
Mm.
Yeah.
Talk to me
Mm.
about some of these viral marketing stunts. I read that that's a big part of what you have attempted to do. And clearly something worked because it got you onto Shark Tank Australia.
Yeah, so a few different ones in the past. Always try and find ways of getting the message out there without too much cost, obviously.
Hmm.
So when we were doing property in the UK for a couple of years, and one of my business partners now was actually a mentor of mine back then. He's a phenomenal business creative purchasing uh, educator, so educating you how to buy property for no money. So we were doing that in the UK, and we were focusing on ugly advertising. It's a form of marketing that just cuts through the usual. The more advertising these days is all about professional. It's professional, above professional. Who can be the most professional? And the problem is, it just all blends into the sea of sameness, and it just
Mm.
all looks the same. Nothing stands out. So we were going from the concept of, what if we reverse that, flip that, and go super, super ugly. We were doing handwritten signage with spelling mistakes, and just really dumbing it down. And so we did these big yellow placards. We were selling property that we were joint venturing in, and selling it on payment plans to make it really, really easy, because we realized that the easier we could make it for someone to buy, then by reshaping the offer, it became really, really easy to sell. So we
Mm.
would just say to people, "Hey, you don't need a mortgage. Just come in, make payments." It's in the US, it's quite big, but in the UK, it was pretty like unheard of. So we would say, buy my flat, £150 per week, buys it, and then our phone number. So my sister and I had these big yellow placards, and we walked across Tower Bridge. I don't know if you know that in London. It's the main bridge that gets photographed. Beautiful tower on it.
Mm.
So we walked across with these signs, and we had buses just pull up in the middle of the street with the bus drivers hanging out, going, "What's going on?" And cars and traffic and policemen and everything sort of stopping traffic in the streets, and people coming up to us. We got photographed, and those photos went around the world. And the phones never stopped ringing. We sold that
Mm.
property within a few days, 20 times over. Quite phenomenal. So they're the sort of things that we like to do to sort of look outside of the box and create some interesting outcomes. Um, and we've done a few of those different ones over the years, and they've worked quite nicely.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that because there's also sort of that's coming full circle on the content creator world also, where like everything went to like super highly produced. And then there's this kid, his name's Sam Sulik. Does that mean anything to you?
No.
He's actually from like Ohio. He's a bodybuilder, and he went absolutely the opposite, like lowest of low production value. He would just take his iPhone and like set it in the driver's seat, and then talk while he's on the way to the gym. And then he just set his iPhone up and has like a little mic, and he's just like talking to his iPhone, recording himself. And he has like 40-minute videos, and he's releasing one every single day. Every single
Wow.
video is like 600,000 views, 700,000 views, like 400,000 views. It's like bodybuilding, day 58 upper, on my 4-month, bulk phase. And it's just like, boop, 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 and he's just absolutely killing it.
Awesome.
And it's kind of just showing like, hey, people want a little bit of authenticity too. So there's always that availability. Like you said, it looks different now because it's not super highly produced.
Yeah. You got to sort of look what's out there in the market and think how you can do the opposite. What would the opposite look like, and would it grab eyeballs? Because we're
Yeah,
all playing for attention.
I just heard Alex Hormozy say if everyone else is doing it, that's a pretty good indicator you shouldn't be doing that thing. It's like, right, because you're just going to be another one in the sea.
Yeah.
And it's like maybe you can be the best amongst those people who are doing a very similar thing, but probably you're just going to fit somewhere in the middle. So why not play your own game? Like write the rules. Don't play the game that everybody else is playing.
Yeah. Think of how you can do it differently. That's solve the problem, but coming from a different angle that not the herd is doing. Yeah, I agree.
So when it comes to viral stunts, I got to ask, what was more stressful, the Guinness World Record in the ice bath, or going on Shark Tank Australia?
Well, with the ice baths, we actually ended up
Tell us
doing.
the story. Give us the backdrop on this, please.
Yeah. It was. I love doing cold therapy. So, and when I say love doing it, it's a sort of love hate arrangement, really. But
Yeah, yeah.
I know it's good for me. I do a lot of talking on dopamine creation, natural dopamine stimulation,
Mm.
and how you can use that in your life, in your health. How to create dopamine stimulation naturally, so that you can actually use it in business. So,
Mm.
my basic concept is with dopamine, the more we can stimulate, the more we can feel good, the longer we can keep it in our body, the more your sort of vibrational energy is frequencing at a higher rate. People like happy people. They like to hang out with people that they like, that have good energy. Most people don't want to be around people with negativity and negative energy.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel the more we can stimulate that dopamine, then it gives us direct benefit in the business world, and doing deals with people and moving people forwards, even negotiation. The more excited and passionate you come across, generally the more influential you can be within a negotiation itself. So part of my weight loss program is built around ketosis, and
Mm-hmm.
going into ketosis has a fantastic impact on dopamine, and that comes back also to as a result, I've created a business diet, a diet that puts you in the best health possible,
Mm.
and mindset as well, which is on my website if anyone wants to look into how you can optimize your health to stimulate more dopamine to create more business outcomes. But the whole the whole cold therapy thing was all about dopamine stimulation, because you can boost your dopamine levels by somewhere between 200 and 400%, which is quite significant when it comes to even in comparison to taking drugs. It's better than
Mm-hmm.
that without the side effects or the cost. So we went into, there was a whole group of us, and we did the world's biggest ice bath. There's something like 590 of us, and we all jumped into these about 40 ice baths all at one time, and we set the Guinness Book of World Records. But unfortunately, that was earlier this year. But unfortunately, I think it's already been beaten. So it's
Mm.
something I can't claim anymore. But in answer to your question, the Shark Tank thing probably was more grueling than that. It was, 40 minutes of very intense questions being thrown at you left, right, and center. So,
So you were in there with them for 40 minutes. That's a long time.
yeah, so that's generally about the amount of time that you spend, and then they just take a snippet of 9 or 10 minutes out of that, all the highlights, and they either make you look totally terrible or
Right.
give you a reasonable angle. And for whatever reason, they thankfully made us look average rather than terrible. So yeah,
Well, you did have a shark put a deal together in front of you.
yeah, we actually had two sharks go for the restaurants. You only saw one on the TV.
Mm.
They cut out the other one, which I don't understand why. But yeah, Janine Ellis from Boost Juice, who created Boost Juice. I don't think it's in the US. No one seems to
It's
know.
not something I've heard of. No.
Yeah,
Is
yeah,
it
it's
like a
huge in
greens
Australia.
powder or what?
So it's just a chain of a chain of fresh juice bars
I
around.
gotcha.
Yeah, they're actually global. They've got several thousand of them around the place now. But she was a creator of that, so she said yes on the TV that she comes on board and helps us with our restaurants, etc. Said yes on the TV. We left the deal open off the TV, and we've been doing our own thing, so we haven't actually
I have
collaborated yet.
heard a similar story to that from more than one person, not on Shark Tank Australia, but on Shark Tank US, where you'll make a
Mm.
deal. I'm doing air quotes right now. You'll make a deal on
Yep.
TV, um, and I can't even call the shark out because I don't remember who the shark was, but we had a brand that did a deal on Shark Tank, and then the shark
Mm.
came back and was like, "Well, we agreed on whatever 40%, but I would actually like to renegotiate to 50%." And then threw in like a just a weird stipulation. It was like I get all the sales on Amazon, and my brand partner was like, "I'm not giving you that. Like that's not the deal that we made." And so apparently
Yeah.
the story is that if they make the deal on TV and the shark backs out, they'll still air your episode. But if you make a deal on TV and you back out, they won't air your episode, which is kind of a bummer because you're like looking for that publicity anyway. Like from what I understand, a lot of people go on just for the publicity.
100%. 100%. Yeah. Yeah. I think the actual TV is just the door opener, and it can go either way. You can choose to, they can choose to, or they can choose not to, and you can too. There's no financial ties or contracts within the actual TV clause, but in the TV presentation. But yeah, look, at the end of the day, it's phenomenal for exposure, and that's exactly why we went on it as well. We think there's probably about $100,000 worth of marketing, free marketing exposure. People now, even 6-8 years later, they go, oh yeah, I saw you on Shark Tank, and they know the brand, which is fantastic for brand building. Yeah, grateful to have had that opportunity.
It was a different brand, but we had a brand that whenever Shark Tank would get re-aired on TV, they'd have like a spike. It'd be like a Tuesday night at 9 p.m. and we'd get like a 20 order spike, and we're like, "What is this?" They only sell
Yes.
three units a day. They sold 20 in like a 90-minute span. It's like, oh, they re-aired Shark Tank. Okay, that makes sense.
Totally. I was actually going to say that every time there's a rerun, we had customers coming into all three restaurants and going crazy and getting excited. So yeah, it's a great form of marketing. Yeah.
Talk to me about you've done business in Australia. It sounds like you've done business in the UK. You obviously probably know a little bit about the United States. What's the difference in business like between those two places and cultures? What's your impression on that?
Yeah, totally different. We were in the property industry in the UK, and people are 100% different. I think in Australia there's a lot of trust, and people I don't feel a little bit more genuine. And
Mm,
when you're coming across in the UK, there's just zero trust. When you're
mm,
negotiating, if you don't have a brand or a reputation already, there's just like, oh, it's a scam. So
mm.
um, it's a lot harder. I think people are a lot more closed to new ideas in the UK, and I believe in the US it's a bit more like Australia, and people are a lot more open to perceiving new concept, to grabbing hold of new concepts and being a lot more entrepreneurial. Because in the UK, I feel it's just, in the majority of people, it's hard work.
Mm.
Yeah.
I have heard that I can't speak to Australia as much because I haven't heard as much about the Australian business culture, but I have heard there's like sort of the tall poppy syndrome where maybe you don't
Mm,
necessarily want to stand out as much in Australia. But I've heard from English and UK based entrepreneurs that that is a pretty strong idea in the UK. That if you're
mm,
going against the norm, it's like, why are you doing that? Like, what are you doing? Either don't
true.
waste your time, or who do you think you are that you can kind of do
Yes.
this thing?
Oh,
Just
totally.
just sort of like a cynical outlook, maybe. And
Yeah.
Chris Williamson, a really popular podcaster who moved from the northern part of England to Austin, Texas, he's like, oh, it's just night and day. Like everyone's so
Yeah.
excited when you're winning here in the United States, but when
Yeah.
you were in the UK, people were just like very cynical about that. Why are you doing that? Who do you think you are? Why are you
Mm.
trying to leave us? Kind of thing. Crabs in a bucket mentality. If you've heard that phrase.
I think you see it. My wife does a lot of screenwriting, and I think she brings my attention towards that. You see it even in the movies. UK based compared to America. UK always end in a terrible, tragic ending, and then the US is always, whoa, everything's uplifted and everything works out awesome. So you just see that, and I guess it's just part of the culture. That's what they're brought up with. That they're a little bit more negative, and in the US they're a little bit more positive. From I'm not sure where that all stems from, but yeah, you see it quite laterally across the breadth of the countries.
Yeah, which is
Yeah.
interesting because I know London is like a financial powerhouse. Like it's one of the super cities. It's one of the largest and most important financial cities on planet Earth. So it's like a interesting dichotomy. But I've also heard that
Mm,
um, England's not a rich country. London's a rich city that the UK just so happens to be attached to. And I don't know how true that
mm,
is, but I've heard once you go farther outside of the London metropolitan area, it's like not a super wealthy area. I mean, the working
mm.
towns, people getting by.
Yeah, and they're doing some crazy stuff in the UK. The government's doing some very strange. I don't want to get political, but as an entrepreneur, it's really hard work in the UK, particularly in the property investment side of things.
Mm,
They're really trying to force the investors out of the country, and disincentivizing them to own property over there.
mm.
So it's a very strange feeling there at the moment, I have to say.
What about in Australia? Is it pretty open to entrepreneurs and just capitalists in general?
Generally, yes. Yeah. Yeah. You still do, as you say, have that tall poppy syndrome, and there's still a bit of that. I think it's changing a little bit, but um, in general, I think the entrepreneurial spirit's pretty welcomed over here. So it's a good place to be
Mm.
for that.
Talk to me
Mm.
about the hotel business. How in the world did you get into these weight loss hotels?
Yeah, so it's a fun area to be in, actually. So
Looks fun, man.
July
If
last,
you have any spaces, I don't need to lose a ton of weight, but I'll go to Bali. If you need me to fill a room,
yeah, yeah, absolutely. We'll do some podcasts from there.
that'd be fun.
Um, so yeah, July last year, I was in Thailand, and I was holidaying with my extended family. There's about 10 of us over there, and I eat keto, and so every meal would sit down. Breakfast they'd have the buffets. I'd just eat keto, as I always do, and they're just filling their face with donuts and all the crap that just sends me into a cold shiver. Being my family,
Mm-hmm.
that never listen to a family, doesn't matter what sort of advice
Mm-hmm.
you have for them, but they seem to like to do that. So I'm there sitting eating all the good keto foods, feeling fantastic, and they're doing their thing, and I was just going to the gym and having some great outdoor exercise, all those sort of good things. And I was sitting there thinking, my goodness, it's actually very easy to. It would be because I'd been running weight loss programs in Australia for 20 plus years. And I was thinking it'd be so easy to do a weight loss program through the hotel. So I said, I've got to meet with the hotel manager. So I had brekkie with him one day and I said, hey, like, what are you doing in the wellness space? And he said, well, um, nothing, but would love to get into it because it's a very lucrative market.
Mm.
And I said, well, what about weight loss? And he said, don't have anything, but open to it. And I was like, okay, I run weight loss programs in Australia. What if we brought them to your hotel and we can book people in for a 7 or 14-day program and give them keto and have massage and exercise and all the good stuff that supports their weight loss journey and have a really supportive environment. He said, love it, let's do it. So I went back to Australia, modified the weight loss program, built it for hotels, came back to him and said, all right, I'm ready to go. And he said, oh, actually, we have to jump through a few more hoops. We have to get it approved by this bloke and this person and this. I was like, wake me up when it's all done, will you? But so I said, well, mate, I've got it ready to go. Go, let's do the approvals. And then there was just so much red tape. And I thought, okay, I've got this great program. What can I do with it? So I adapted it so that any hotel around the world can plug and play system in and they can utilize a weight loss program. So I went to Bali, January last year, and set up meetings with 8 hotels over there and that showed some interest in in being in that industry. And 7 of them turned around and said, yeah, that sounds great. That's
Whoa.
exactly what we're looking for.
Hey, 7 out of
So I
8,
thought,
pretty good, man.
7 out of 8, yeah. So I thought, oh wow, we must be on something here. So I've been working with a couple of them to launch. We've launched one of them about a month ago, our first one, and then slowly working on the other ones to bring them up speed. We've got to convert their restaurants, etc., to a keto menu, and there's a bunch of things that we do. But so yeah, that's how that one was born, and yeah, pretty cool just to go and hang out in hotels and help them build stuff. So
What
that
is
was
that
the thought behind that.
what's that experience look like? How long is it, and what are people doing on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, so it's a whole package that we've set up. So we're offering 7, 14, and 21 days that they can come and so they eat 3 meals a day that are specifically tailored to keto and weight loss. They have 2 massages a week and they participate in some exercise. And there's a whole bunch of mindset stuff. I'm pretty passionate about the mindset and it's called a keto neurogenic weight loss program. So keto for changing the body chemistry into ketosis. Neurogenic is all about brain, and we use neuro-linguistic programming to sort of stuff that Anthony Robbins advocates on changing people, breaking patterns and creating new long-term lasting actions. So bring all that together in a weight loss program, and we do consulting with them while they're there over the 7 or 14 or 21 days and get them fully mind manipulated into some really awesome habits and creating new patterns for long-term
So
outcomes.
presumably 7 days, you're not trying to get people to lose 20 pounds. The primary thing is you're trying to change their mental approach to weight loss.
It works pretty quickly. So 7 days usually is 2 to 3 kilos. So it can work quite quickly. In the first 7 days, there's a lot of fluid loss in particular. When you're cutting out the carbohydrates and you're changing the body fuel from glucose to ketones. So that works really, really well. But it's a question of being with them regularly, educating them, giving them feedback, giving them understanding of what their body's going through and systems and processes to keep that going long term so that they can actually keep the weight off. It's a training program as well as an active participation program.
How did you come to this kind of understanding of health and wellness? Sounds like you got some interesting views on health and wellness. Obviously, keto sounds like a big part of that. How did you sort of arrive on that? What was that process like?
As a naturopath, I was exposed to it in a small way when I was going through college, and then having a family member with cancer. He
Mm,
had stage 4 terminal cancer, and we utilized keto and chemotherapy
mm,
and got some absolutely phenomenal results. So we were able to, with the keto therapy, we took out sugar. Sugar is one of the biggest things that cancer thrives on. So,
I have heard that.
Mm. So by removing that, then the cancer cells become a little bit weaker, and then the chemotherapy comes through and I mean, it's pretty toxic stuff, but it kills off weakened cancer cells that much more efficiently. So
Mm,
that was how originally I got back into keto. I'd been running weight loss programs, as I said, for many years in clinical practice through keto, and then personally got back involved in it with my family member when he was going through the cancer. So I wanted to set a bit of an example of how to eat and to show him it was quite possible. And yeah, that was what reintroduced my passion for it personally
mm.
on a personal level. Yeah.
If someone hasn't ever been in ketosis, it's an interesting feeling. It's definitely very different than
Mm.
the way you feel when you're eating carbohydrates. I have to admit, I'm a carbohydrate lover. Um, I'm pretty active, and I've definitely done keto for longer periods of time. Probably not nearly as long as you, but it is a very interesting feeling to be in ketosis.
Mm. And it's not a normal one. I mean, the normal state is that we eat carbohydrates 3+ times a day. So you'll never go into ketosis if you're eating that much glucose. But if you cut that out of your diet, then your body has to look for another source of fuel, which is utilizing the fat tissue. And when it breaks down fat tissue, it releases these ketones, and they're fantastic for brain function. Hence the brain, the business diet that I sort of created off the back of that was all about maximizing your brain function, your memory, your concentration, all your cognitive function of brain to maximize it, and brain works really well on ketones rather than sugar. So that's a really useful thing why when you're trying to get the best out of your brain for business or life in general.
Yeah, you definitely feel like a stable sense of energy.
Mm,
Like whereas like carbs, you feel like you're kind of up, you're kind of down. I need a caffeine. In
hmm.
keto, you always just feel like
Correct.
sustained at a solid level of energy. Now then, I guess the counter argument to that would be, at least my what I experience is sometimes I want like extra. I want to like I want to juice it up, man. Like we worked out this morning. Like I want to like really go. Keto sometimes for me at least it always felt harder to get really ramped up for like a gym workout or whatever I'm doing. But I know there are endurance athletes who go keto and they'll do 100-mile races
Mm.
exclusively eating and burning fat.
Well, if you combine dopamine stimulation with keto, you'll probably find that you get those little highs that you're after. Unfortunately, generally, what goes up must come down. So, if you enjoy that roller coaster ride, and a lot of people do, mate, in energy in relationships, people love that up and down.
Mm.
They hate that stagnation. They always need some sort of stimulation. But what I find is that if you can create more consistency, but get your little highs, your mental highs out of more dopamine, and you touched on it there when with endurance running, because marathon running is one of the most effective things for increasing endorphin stimulation in the brain. Um, and that's
The
why a lot of people,
runner's high, right?
yeah, 100%. That's why a lot of people do it. So, there's a bunch of things that actually stimulate dopamine. Music is one thing, laughter is one, sex is huge. um, endurance sports, all those sort of things. The more intensity the body has to go through, the more the endorphin stimulation, because it's just a natural way that the body copes with all those pressures being put on the body on a physical level.
Mm.
So if you can get all those, bring little aspects of those into daily life, you can get those little highs without too much of a low that you might experience through
Yeah,
the roller coaster
and
ride.
this is something that I picked up from Anna Lemke. I'm sure she's someone that you've learned from, but I didn't necessarily understand that you have like a fixed amount of dopamine in your body essentially. So if you're using all your dopamine for like these little hits like on TikTok, you're like getting these like free dopamine hits, also ones that you didn't work for, you didn't earn like you're describing. And then people wonder why they're like feeling sad or feeling anxious or feeling
Mm,
lonely, and it's because you used up all your dopamine like scrolling on TikTok. So like you said, you're going to create like a peak, but then you have to go through a valley to like get back to even keel. This is why like if you go out and drink on Saturday night, it's like, oh, I feel like just like sad and anxious on, they call them the
mm,
Sunday scaries, right?
mm,
Anxiety. You've used up a lot of that dopamine on Saturday night. Now you have to go into a pit to like get back to
mhm,
level. And that was
mm.
something that I hadn't necessarily known previous. So it makes a lot of sense why people who are like scrolling on social media feel this just like abject anxiety. It's because you're using up all that dopamine. You're getting it for free. You didn't have to work for it.
That's it. That without working for it, without putting the body through any physical intensity, then yeah, it's going to be short term, and you're going to crash down pretty quickly after it. So the more intense physical activity that you go, the longer it lasts for within reason as well. So yeah,
Mm.
you got to work for it.
What about you? What kind of forms of exercise do you find to be enjoyable?
Do a little bit of running, and usually hit the beach a couple of times a week, and just get that cold intensity. So I'll do that throughout the year, even through winter. That's more of a challenge, I find. Getting through the cold wind and the rain, and
Mm-hmm.
then jumping in the ocean. So that's always a bit of a challenge. But yeah, and a little bit of gym work. So three things that I do. Yeah.
Talk to me about financial literacy. Like I said, that was something that is really exciting for me. I'm with you. Why don't we teach this? The old
Mm.
classic joke. Like I was taught that the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell, but no one taught me how to do taxes. I heard
Correct.
an, I heard an anecdote. This is kind of funny. Um, One of my buddies, his girlfriend just graduated from I think dental school, and she got a job as a dentist. And I don't know, she's probably making decent money, $80,000. And she was talking to her boyfriend, and she was like, "Yeah, I had to call HR today." And he's like, "Well, why?" He's like, "Cause like my paycheck, it like wasn't the amount that I was supposed to get paid." And he's like, "Well, what do you mean?" She's like, "Yeah, it was like 30% less than what they told me I was gonna get paid." And he was like, well, what did HR say? HR said those are taxes that were getting pulled out of my account. They
Thanks.
said that it was correct. And it's like, she's not wrong. I mean, maybe a little naive, but it's like, no, nobody ever really explained this to you as a kid. And the
Mm,
classic joke is
mm.
like all the problems of the youth can be solved by paying taxes. Um, so we don't learn a lot of these things, and I don't necessarily know why. You can get conspiratorial about it. They're trying to keep us, poor, sick, and stupid. But I don't think that usually it's that. It's more so just, lack of foresight.
Yeah, yeah. For whatever reason, it's totally underdone, and kids go through school without a clue. I guess we're all processed for jobs rather than for entrepreneurial outcomes through school. That's what it teaches us, but. There's a serious lack of financial literacy within kids, and what we're finding, and the reason I got into it was I was on Shark Tank, and then I started doing presentations to schools, just telling them a little bit about my experience in Shark Tank, and kids were really, really excited about it, and wanted to know more. And so we went and started going down creating the idea of, well, why don't we create little mini Shark Tanks in different schools and
Very cool.
allow kids, to get involved in that concept and come up with some creative solutions for solving problems that exist in the community with business entrepreneurial outcomes. So started doing that, and schools really loved it. And it's amazing how much the kids light up with that sort of stuff, where they're exposed to the whole entrepreneurial journey and creating businesses and finding outcomes and putting it all together and then doing a presentation. So it's just so beneficial for kids to be involved in that. So from there we realized that there's just that doesn't exist. The lack of financial literacy doesn't exist. So kids know nothing about, as you say, taxes and budgeting and business and sales and marketing, all this stuff. I mean, negotiation, for example, it's just so important in so many different aspects of life. We look at, if your kid's late with their homework, you need to be able to communicate that and negotiate with your teacher to get an extension. If you're in a relationship and one partner wants to break up, then knowing negotiation skills might be a way of solving these issues without
Oh,
them,
yeah.
you know, going pear-shaped. So so as a result, I've actually teamed up with the headmaster from from my son's school, who we are working with, my wife and the headmaster. My wife's in sort of PR, and the headmaster's all about putting the curriculum together for financial literacy that suits the schooling educational system in Australia. So we've put together a bit of a course that we're offering other schools in financial literacy and the whole Shark Tank concept of getting kids excited about entrepreneurialism now. So
Mm.
that's where we're at with that one.
Yeah. How does the school system work in Australia? Is it like public education, like the same curriculum across the country, or are there private schools? How does that work?
Yeah, public and private, and basically they all have to do the same start, cover the same content, and we have set up a program for kindergarten to up to year 12. So basically the whole, I don't know if you've got the same schooling system over there,
Yep.
but the whole
Yep.
run. So and each year covers, just touches on very small parts of financial literacy, but way underdone, the basic curriculum. So we've integrated into each year group and just expanded on what's presented in the standard curriculum, so we can give a more thorough education with the likes of videos and content that the teachers can teach about financial literacy. So
Mm.
that's how it goes across Australia, and once that's integrated, then we would love to do it in different countries as well.
Yeah, there's this big uprising in the United States around charter schools. Does that mean anything to you?
No.
So essentially what a charter school is you could start a school, a charter school, and then it depends on where you are. We have these 50 states, and all 50 states have like their own unique rules, which is kind of cool, but also makes things a little confusing. So I had someone on the podcast, I think David K. Richards was talking about this, and they start these charter schools. It started really in California, and David was like part of the movement. They start these charter schools. You can start it. You can get, doesn't really matter how many kids you get enrolled, but if a parent decides they want their child to go into your charter school, you get the public funding as opposed to the public school. So you get paid basically based upon how many kids enroll in your school. And
Interesting.
state by state, the criteria for what that charter school has to deliver is a little bit different.
Mm.
So I'm sure in California there's just like more stringent requirements. But in Arizona, the way that David described it is they basically opened it up, and I don't think that you can get public funding yet, but you can get a high school education. And there were not any restrictions on what that charter school would teach. So hypothetically, I was like, so David, you're telling me in Arizona, if I want to start a school where like what me and kids do is we just go hike in the woods. He's like, yep, absolutely. He's like, if a parent decides that they want to go to your school, the kids can go hike with you in the woods for 7, 8 hours a day. And that is considered their high school education. So I was
Wow.
like, well, I love it. If because what I was thinking is great. I would start like a little finance school. I'd start like,
Right.
Harvard business, but at a high school level. And maybe you take kids through and they can start their business when they're 18 years old. I mean, just remember back when you were 18, how much freaking energy you had and how much
For
vigor.
sure.
Like, not to mention you have such a long runway. Like, imagine if you're in business for 20 years when you're 18 and then you're 38. You're like, I'm still super young. I can still keep rocking and rolling. But you've been in
Yeah.
business for 20 years. It's amazing. So yeah, that's a cool thing that is happening in the United States, and I think it's going to only get bigger because a lot of parents were extremely frustrated during COVID. The kids were at home and they were watching these kids do these Zoom calls, and they were like, "This is the education that you're getting? Like, this is
Mm,
terrible. Like, this
mm.
is not good enough at all."
Right. Oh, that sounds interesting. Well, that might integrate quite nicely with the financial literacy, as you say.
I can connect you with my buddy David K. Richards, man. I think you guys would have a fun talk, and
Let's do
I
it.
think it's a good thing, just giving kids more opportunity to learn different things, different skills, right? Like your kids
Mm,
may want like 8 hours of finance stuff. They're like, I don't want like biology. Like somebody else is going to be a doctor. It's not going to be me.
true.
Um,
True.
there's some fundamental like
Absolutely.
skills I think kids need, but I don't know if
Mm,
I need AP calculus. Like that's not gonna. I'm not the
mm.
guy for that. You know.
Yes. Yeah. And we're seeing that, just the kids get so excited about the business and the entrepreneurial journey that they're exposed to. And some of them are just like loving it. Others, could take it or leave it. And so exposure to those things is going to resonate with some and obviously not with others. But yeah, having the exposure there is awesome because otherwise it's not provided at all, isn't it? They don't have the opportunity to see if they like it or not in the first place, in most schooling
Well,
environments.
well, what I've always said about entrepreneurship is that it's just a creative endeavor. It's just creative
Mm,
endeavor masquerading as capitalism, right?
mm,
You can
true.
you can start anything you want, right? Like you started
Mm,
a weight loss hotel. It's like that didn't exist previous to this. You've started all these different
mm,
restaurants and meal companies, and I know you do digital
mm,
marketing. Like this is creativity at work. You have to be more creative than everyone else to solve these problems at a high level. Whereas
true.
math, it's like, hey, right or wrong answer. Did Nathan get the answer right? No, it's wrong. It's like, well, what
Yep.
was my thinking correct? It's like your thinking was correct, but your answer was wrong. Whereas there's no wrong answer in business. I do. You talked about spending some time in Thailand. I train in Muay Thai, and my coach always says like, if it works, like it's effective. If it's
Mm,
effective, then it's right. Like it,
mm,
maybe you could do the thing wrong, but if you land the punch, like it worked there. Now, if you're fundamentally doing something wrong and it's like getting you hurt, it's like, okay, that's wrong. But if it works, it works.
mm,
And the same thing is true in business. Like, you know, you can criticize these influencers, Kendall Jenner, and be like, she's not as good at business as I am. But it's like, it's working. She's better at business than you. I'm sorry. That's just is what
mm,
it is. Like the
mm.
proof is in the pudding.
That's it. That's it. And in business, there's 100 different ways to get to the results. And as long as that result's a positive cash flow, then you know it's working. And if that's a negative cash flow, then you probably have to look at what you're doing a bit and change your technique.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hopefully,
Yeah.
it improves society as a whole, but that's for society to decide upon. Uh, well,
True.
Nathan, with all these businesses that you've heard, maybe put a bow on it, man. Is there a couple of quick lessons that people can take and absorb from you so they don't have to start 15 businesses through 40 years and they can just listen to the podcast and be on their way?
I think one of the biggest lessons I've learned along the way is um, that the education side. We've discussed it in the financial literacy side, but um, equipping yourself with the skills that you need to grow a business. I mean, at the end of the day, that's the part that I love the most is growing businesses. And one of the biggest things for me was learning about how to grow a business and the marketing side of things. And
Mm,
I think that's just really key as far as success in any business. A business with more sales and more profit struggles to go bad. It's very hard
Mhm.
not to be successful with lots of sales and more sales and more profit. It's very hard to stuff that up. So anything that adds to that bottom line, I think, equipping ourselves with the financial literacy and the financial skills around biz growth has just been the one of the most important things to me, which means that I could apply that to any business. So for the listeners out there, I think, knowing and understanding how to grow businesses is one of the best skills that you can absolutely have in growing sales. So make sure that's a big part of your day that you spend on that side of things. That would be my little nugget of advice right now.
Yeah, every person in every organization is in sales. It's
True.
just your job. It all fundamentally leads to sales because that is the premise of
Mm-hmm.
an organization. And my
100%.
friends that are stock traders, they would say you never go broke making a profit.
Mm.
So, like you said, man, if you can scrape a little bit of profit off, all you got to do is replicate that, and you're in business.
Yep. Yep. Replicate, magnify it, and yep, keep growing. Love it.
Well, Nathan, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate you. You're a fantastic example of pivoting around through the business world and enjoying it all the way along the way, and staying healthy while you're at it.
Thanks, Alex. Yeah.
Where can people find some of your stuff?
Yeah, direct through the website, nathanbaws.com. We've actually started a little monthly get together. So for any entrepreneur, there's no charge. We love chatting business and business growth. So we do that third Wednesday of every month, and that's connect through the website is probably the best way to go if you want to come along.
Awesome. And you're in Perth?
Perth, Western Australia. Yep. Yep.
I've heard it's beautiful. I've had a couple people from Australia on at this point in time.
Oh, cool. Okay. Yeah. No,
Aw-
we've got a great spot over here.
Awesome. Thank you, Nathan. Really appreciate you, brother.
Lovely. Thanks so much, mate. Been a pleasure.
Thanks.